So some of the things that are being introduced in my area where I live are alternative affordable housing structures such as tiny homes, cooperative living arrangements, integrating housing solutions as a community. And one of the things that is most debilitating to our city is that we do not have enough resources for people with mental illness and people who are struggling with poor coping mechanisms of addiction. So we do not have enough resources for people to have the rehabilitation services, and we do not have the housing for when they are released from these rehabilitation services. So we need respite facilities that are integrated into our community structures, part of the housing development plan, as housing, not as some external, faraway warehouse building in the middle of nowhere to say, we don't want you in our neighborhood, we don't want you near our business. We need to get past our bias towards people who have nothing, who are struggling and trying to regain a foothold in our community. Embrace these people that are part of who we are. They are our neighbors. They are us. They have experienced hardship. They have experienced some sort of loss. They are in crisis mode, and they need a foothold to regain what they had prior to losing it, prior to the traumatic experience. And if they have never had any stability, then we need to have education, we need to have counseling, we need to have all the structures that a person would need that's necessary for them to have, at least at the modicum amount of level, the same sustainability as any other person who is functioning and has a quality of life that can be successful. We all have potentials. We all can meet these potentials. As a community, it's our responsibility. So what we're seeing is a division in our financial categories. This is more or less a situation in which those who are in a position of stability and are able to be successful and are able to meet the criteria and the requirement for sustainability are prospering, and those who are not able to are falling down. And the system that we have in place is working against them, so they are literally being oppressed by our conditions. We need conditions that will help alleviate the struggle and the pain and the struggle and lift them back to a place where they can be successful. This isn't socialism necessarily, because we live in a democracy and we live in a capitalist society. This is more or less giving the tools, providing the tools and resources that are available to all of us, because we are a wealthy country, so that the people that we're investing in are able to sustain their lives and be successful and prosper and give back to the community. It's not a big mystery. This isn't, to quote Holmes now, rocket science. What we are facing is a challenge of population growth and economic need for jobs that are sustainable for people to meet the requirements for their basic housing, water, food, and not fall down. And when we do fall down, which we all fall down, whether it be our health, our mental health, our physical health, whether it be our ability to cope with the world when we do struggle and not do something that's more self-destructive, understanding the ritual and the behavior, they can collapse us when we're in a situation of crises. So all of this stuff is connected. This is a connected situation. And to stand in judgment of those who are in a critical position of loss or trauma or struggle, and look down on them and then create penalties in our legal system on local and state levels in which we are penalizing someone for occupying their space, for instance, for life-sustaining needs that they are meeting, but they are meeting it in a public place because they do not have a roof over their head. That is unconstitutional. That is a critical, deterrent to their success. They cannot continue to stay afloat or stay above or maintain their livelihood and their literally their life sustaining, whether it's relieving themselves, sleeping, occupying their living, breathing space in a public area, is considered wrong. It's considered illegal. It is created as a shaming factor to push people. It's that tough love thing or that broken windows thing where they're trying to push people back into society, and that does not help them. It is not helping people recover. That is oppressing them, and it's shaming them to a point that their self-esteem has already been compromised by our level of peer pressure that we have on each other as capitalists. That if we fail and we don't have the money and the net worth and net value as a human being in our society, we are failures. So we're pushing each other down even further than we already are when we have these legal rules that are criminalizing a person when they've already reached their limit. They've already fallen down. We've got to do better than that, especially when we have a society, a nation right now that has infiltrated drugs, not only in our pharmaceutical capacity, but in our streets, the street versions of our pharma drugs that are compromising the health and compromising the ability for people to sustain themselves when they choose to do that activity, not always by their fault of their own. Usually they experience some physical trauma first, and then in order to cope with that physical or mental trauma, they use medications, they medicate it, and that medication is not always accessible through pharma and legal routes, and then it is something somebody takes on a street level, especially if they've been kicked out of their housing situation and now they're living on the street. It is so easy to acquire. This is where people that are everyday people are facing these situations, and then we're criminalizing them when what they need is rehab, what they need is stability, what they need is housing first. They need a roof over their head. They need to have a place where they can get their bearings back and then assess their situation and take that next step. But how is anyone supposed to exist or survive when they have no shelter? So our city structures and on a local and a state level, we are compromising ourselves as a whole community if we do not have affordable housing, if we don't have routes for affordable housing, if we don't have routes for building alternative structures that may or may not fit into our current zoning laws. We need to reassess that and make some changes. And we need to do that sooner rather than later, because there are people living in tents in squalor on our city streets, and this is frickin' America. We look like some third world developing country. This is pathetic. What is this? Make America great again? And I'm not placing this all on this one administration, but I don't see anything great happening. Do you? So let's just hold our current administration to those words, those founding words that got him elected. Okay, the founding words of his entire campaign. The only people that are going to be having anything great happen are those who are wealthy enough to afford the current economic structures that we're living and abiding by. And that's creating a division. It's creating a division between wealthy and poverty, wealth and poverty. It's becoming very evident across our nation, and any one of us can fall down. All of us are hanging in the balance. None of us is immune to this. How many paychecks away are you from being broke? Not being able to pay your rent, not being able to afford food for your kids. What's your savings account like? How much debt are you in? Would you be forced into a labor camp if for some ungodly reason our country became a dictatorship instead of a democracy? These things can happen. They happen to governments all the time, all across the world. What makes America any different? We the people. That's us. That means it's our responsibility to get off our asses and make sure that our policymakers and our legislation is fairly representing the people. And if we look around us and we see hundreds of people on the streets debilitated by drug addiction, debilitated by lack of housing. What does that say? Do you really think you're immune to that? I know I'm not. I'm sitting here looking like, holy fuck, you know? I might have a background of having had a decent upbringing and having had an education and having had parents who cared about me enough to where I know how to manage my life and my self-esteem so that I don't cripple myself. But that doesn't make me immune to this. I am still front and center, relying on certain assistance programs as a single mom, that if those don't exist or those get cut by, our current administration, I'm going to be out on the street. I won't be sitting here in front of a computer having this discussion with God only knows whoever wants to watch it. We all need to kind of wake up here. This is where our city and our state and our possible role as citizens can be impacted. We can set the formula for how we want this to be. Whatever city you live in, whatever state you live in, impress on your city officials and state officials and your legislators what it is you want to see. And set that formula. Set that bar really high for other states and cities to follow. Because we're only crippling ourselves when we start to cripple each other. And that's just wrong. That's not making America great again. Sorry, but it just isn't. That's all I have to say for right now.